Hello, and welcome to the Maple Moon podcast. This is your host, Courtney, and long time no speak. I am sorry for the absence. I've had a lot going on in my life. Honestly, since about July, I really just haven't been settled at all, and that's the reason for the absence. I try to write and put out content through everything, but this year has been really um up and down. With on the writing front, I'm trying to write a play. But I have to do that in stages because since about July, August, well, it happened before then, but then it made itself better. But I've been having a lot of like stress-induced vision issues, so it's hard to focus on writing a lot of the time, and a lot of the time I just don't have a lot to say at the minute, which is really unfortunate and quite frustrating. There's things I have to say in terms of writing plays, and I'm doing that slowly, but that's not actually content that's gonna come out for you personally. Um all my plays are stored on the New Play Exchange anyway. So I've been trying to write something for the Substack. I'm just not sure what. I've been very blocked in the last few months. I've had a lot of health stuff and financial troubles, which actually I've really had to set up a GoFundMe page, because I'm really struggling financially right now. I'll put the link in the show notes. If you can donate anything, that would be absolutely amazing. We're really, just need to pay the bills right now. Um, so that's really on the list of priorities. So if you really can donate, I know times are tough for everyone, and it being Christmas. But please consider donating. This episode's really just going to be a lot about updates and general rambles. I've had nothing properly planned um for a while. I really am trying to plan another proper episode, but I just haven't decided on what, because right now I can't, due to financial constraints, I can't buy any more books, and the things I want to talk about are, I really need a physical copy to mark up. Like staring at a screen all the time is just not good for me anyway. Um, and there are some that I do have copies of, I just don't know where they are. I have so many books around here that are just piled up. But I am hoping to plan an episode um soon, so I'm sorry if you subscribe to the podcast. It's been a while. I know I've not updated anybody. I've just been slammed with just life in general. What I usually do is read a page from my journal. So there's a lot in here that's a lot of creative writing stuff. Um, but what I can read out is probably, well, here's a bit about being unproductive is I have a skin issue. Being that I'm housebound, I have ended up with some pressure sores, unfortunately, which cause me some extreme pain. And they also make me unproductive because the burning, the stinging of them, just you just can't focus at all anyway. And then just general anxiety. So I've been writing about that. But what I found interesting is I've been reading the completed plays of Aristophanes, the essentially was called the father of comedy. And if you've ever said to someone you're living in cloud cuckoo land, that actually comes from his play of the birds, which is an interesting fact to you. But as I was reading the first play, which is The Arcanians, it's absolutely filthy, as a lot of the ancient Greeks were. But there is a quote that I wrote down here, which I found really funny, which says, "You horny, hotted up arsehole shaver." And I just thought that was hilarious. It very much is reminiscent of Catullus's filth. Catullus was a poet, and he was absolutely filthy as well. And I think people have this idea. I saw something yesterday. It was a question on a quiz show, and the person said, "Oh, I don't think this at this time period they spoke like that, but I know the Victorians were quite buttoned up and things do change, but there's so much filth in history that people just don't seem to realise that we spoke the way we speak now many years ago. You know, in ancient Greece, people were swearing and being dirty and filthy, and I just don't think people realise. Um, what I've also been considering is the fact that I turned 29 on the 28th of May. Um, and I've been reflecting a lot because this will be the final year of my 20s, which is, I'm going to be 30 in a year and a bit. And it's a big milestone, turning 30. I'm not probably turning 30 in the best of circumstances, given I became chronically ill a couple of years ago. So I've just been reflecting a lot on the past decade because it unfortunately started the way it's kind of ending. When it started, we were moving from our childhood home, and I didn't want to do that. I was absolutely adamant I didn't want to go. But I was forced to for circumstances. And since then, of having no closure of the childhood home, which was my safe space, it's funny, I've never loved a house like I loved that place. It was just, there was something magical about it, and the way our street used to be. If you can picture just a straight road, a completely flat straight road, and then you turn onto this little close, but the close actually dips, it goes down a hill, like it's an incline. So you're on top, and then all of a sudden you go within this little area close, and it was very picturesque where my childhood home was. The house across from us had this big cherry tree, sort of this. It was just this big sprawling tree. And so when it would be autumn, all the leaves would be orange, just covering it. And because of the wind, it would disperse onto our grass. We had a grass verge outside. Um, and the actual area, it just looked like a little postcard. It was so picturesque. And I was so lucky to live there for the 17 years we did. Because I was there from the ages of 3 to 20. I was 20 when we moved, about to be 21 in the following year. So I basically spent my entire life there. You know, we lived briefly before we got there, um, further into town, and I don't really remember anything about that house. Um, all I know is that we lived right near a railway, so the trains used to come by. But the house that we ended up living in was my granddad and grandma's house before they sold it to us. Um, so my dad had the bedroom that I had growing up, so we both had the same bedroom. And it's where mum, well, essentially, funnily enough, and not really an image I want to think about, but I was conceived in my childhood bedroom. So there was a lot of history in that house as well. And it's funny because I've been unhappy a lot of my life. You know, I mean, I've been incredibly lucky for a lot of things in my life. But I've also been, I mean, I didn't know at one point that I was neurodivergent, and I was also bullied a lot growing up, so I was unhappy a lot of the time. And really just coming home and getting in that house and then going up into my bedroom, it just brought so much comfort, and I've never had a feeling like that since. And because we left so quick, we left really weird. We basically packed a suitcase one night and just upped and left the house and left everything there and then sorted it months down the line. It was all a bit strange. I don't need to go into it, but so I didn't get any closure really. Like, people like you get to say goodbye at least. But for me, like I didn't want to go in the first place. And then I was forced to, and then I didn't get any closure. So since then, I've never really felt at home anywhere. Like the house I live in now, it's ours, but it just doesn't feel like home at all. I just feel as though my soul is still tied to that house that's what, like 15 minutes away now. And the before I got chronically ill, the only time I'm ever near there is to see my granddad because he lived around the corner from that house. So whenever I'm there for, family gatherings and whatnot, I feel that little pang of sadness because I automatically feel like I should just be walking back round home, like we used to. Because especially at Christmas, whenever we'd go to my grand's for a gathering, so I mean, sometimes we'd take the car, but it was literally round the corner, so a lot of the time we would just walk. Although the road is like quite long, so it does take you a minute to get there, but it always just feels like I should be going straight back there. And if I ever start driving again and I actually do eventually pass, I'll probably end up sometimes trying to drive there because I feel like I still belong there. I feel like a piece of me was left in that house I've never really regained. And it's an odd feeling. I don't hear anybody say about this being so attached to a house, but it's really bizarre. So since then, I've still been very unhappy. And there are a lot of good things that have happened and bad things, but I always feel like I should be in that house. Sometimes I feel like I would cope much better with my illness and everything going on with my health and stuff if we were in that house still. I feel I'd find so much more comfort just being in that house than being in the one that I'm in right now. But as I'm reflecting, I wrote down a lot of things that have happened since in the decade, and essentially, really, this has been quite a bad decade. My 20s have just been filled with basically mostly downs. I turned 20 the May, and then the December we left that house, moved into the one that I didn't want to move into, and then only 8 months on from that, my parents divorced after 20 years of marriage, and 22 years of being together. Our cat died the same weekend I found out they were splitting up. Um, and then it was a series of more house moves that I didn't want to do. We were basically going around from house to house in temporary situations. I met a man pandemic. He was an editor. We were long distance. He lived in Canada. Never got to see him, and then he died in the December before we ever got to meet properly. I've got handwritten letters from him, all the texts we did, the voice notes. Yeah, so then that happened, and that just threw me for a loop again. The whole pandemic itself, which was completely unprecedented and something I would never have expected to happen in my lifetime. The concept of being actually forced inside, pandemics we used to think were a thing of the past. You think of the plague, and then 2020 rolls around, and I remember hearing about the stirrings of it because I remember reading about it on the news, and they were saying about how we might have to stay in for a while, and it just seemed really odd. And then I remember going to Boots in the city centre, which for anyone who doesn't live in the UK is like CVS. And I remember this woman, she bought like, I think there was in a basket, there was 15 hand sanitizers. And it sort of hit me as though, oh, like this is serious. And then obviously we ended up locked down, and that was the rest is history, literally. And it was just completely unprecedented, something you would never think would happen. Um, so the whole pandemic in general, I spent, I had my 23rd birthday in the first lockdown. And I think we were out for my, barely just out for my 24th, really. But yeah, so then that happened. Then moved house again, to the one we're in now. Um, Began doing open mics regularly. Got a play professionally staged. These aren't in order because the play professionally staged happened last year while I've been chronically ill, and then obviously the chronic illness coming in was something I did not foresee and has definitely been an absolute kick in the teeth. Got another cat, Barney, who turns 5, unbelievably, in February. Um, yeah, a lot has happened, and not very. Oh God, I've completely forgotten a lot of the stuff. I just realised I've not even put down the fact that my dad got remarried and that I've got a half brother who was like almost 30 years apart in age difference. And I'm also becoming a big sibling for the second time who actually might share a birthday with me because he's due the day before my 29th birthday. So yeah, I completely forgot to write that down too. I'll amend that after. But yeah, I've become a big sister in that time. Um, my dad found someone else, got remarried after the divorce. So yeah, I completely I completely forgot to bloody write that down. So yeah, a lot has happened in the 10 years, and it's just been, yeah, this 10 years really hasn't been great, to be honest. And it's funny because it all seems to stem from the fact that we left my childhood home. Don't get me wrong, before we left, things weren't exactly perfect either, but I was happy. Well, I can't say happy, I've never been truly happy, but I felt safe in that house. And I don't mean safe as in immediate danger. I just mean there's something, like, it was my sanctuary in that house. I'd spent so many years, I grew up in that house, went through primary school, all those years, the 2000s, cousins that, I don't get to see anymore staying over. Things happened in that house, over the years. Like, I can picture so many things. When they killed off Dirty Den and EastEnders in 2005, I can remember sitting on the bed in my parents' bedroom, watching it on a repeat on the Sunday. And it's like right now I've got That's So Raven on the TV, and I can remember Saturday mornings we'd go to my nana's, um, and we'd be getting ready in the morning. I can smell my mum's perfume, I can see dad getting ready. And I just remember having Disney Channel on, downstairs, and That's So Raven being on, and Hannah Montana, and Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. All these shows that I used to watch, and it's just something. A part of me died when we left that house, and it's such a spiritual thing that I can't explain it. I can't put it into words, and words are my trade. I just feel that when I'm eventually gone, I will not haunt any of these places I've been since. Where I will haunt is that place, that house. I will go back there, and whatever heaven might be, or wherever it is that you go after you die, it's got to be the house. That must be the first thing I will see, because I cannot explain to you the soul connection I have to that house. And it was sold off, so I know other people live there, and it's all been redecorated and changed, but it's still that house. If I could go in now, because I've thought about it, I know you shouldn't, but I've thought about it, as if it's ever up for sale, we can't buy it, but to just go and have a look round. But then if I see it and I go looking, I just won't want to leave. Because a cool feature of my bedroom was I had two like eye sort of windows, but then where my bed used to lie against, I had this circular feature window. And my old cat Millie used to love sitting in the little circle. Honestly, when I talk about it, it sounds like a little fairy tale house, and it kind of was. And I really do, miss that. So I suppose I should get to the updates. Um, Reading is going quite slow at the minute. I've just not been in the mood. As I've said, I've been reading Aristophanes' plays. On audio book, I've got The Way We Live Now by Anthony Trollope going, but I'm sort of dipping in and out of that. Um, I'm finding it quite difficult to complete a lot of things at the minute, just in terms of where my attention is. That's why I'm trying to read a lot of plays. I did just get a credit to spend, and so I have spent that on Ulysses by James Joyce, on audiobook, which has been a long time coming to read that. So I'm probably gonna do that. But reading plays actually helps me out anyway, because I'm writing another one. Um, I've been trying to sort of plan some out, and I did have a plan for one that I thought I was gonna go into today, but then I had a small idea um earlier that I'm considering. I think it can be very hard to get going with plays because there's so much. I think the structure is obviously a lot different to writing short stories. And it's a case of you've got to build up your acts and all these little scenes that you've got to build up. And it's a lot of, I don't necessarily think you can really go into writing a play without a plan. It's just one of those things because you need the structure of the play. Like, are you going to do a one act play? Are you doing a two act, three act? I've not decided yet. The ideas I've got going might be more suited to a one act play in terms of the suffocating feeling. So I'll consider that. But then you've got to build out your scenes and they've got to be, decently developed. The characters have got to be developed because the thing about plays is that yeah, you can have a plot and everything, but it's the characters that, sell the play. It has to be that way. Um, and I'm trying to get a full play down because so far I've only ever this is the thing, right? This is the thing I've always struggled with is long projects. That's why I ended up with short stories and poetry because for some reason I've always wanted to write a novel, but I really struggle with extendedly long projects. I think my talents are much more suited to short term, but I really want to write a full play. It's the way to success, really. I've had my short play, 10-minute play, put on a series of short nights. The last play I wrote was a 15-page play that could stretch to about almost 20 minutes if you really stretch it out. Um, that was Pigeon Winter. Um, that's not been performed. Yeah, I've sent that for an opportunity somewhere, but I won't hear back about that till probably March, April, I think. I'll hear back about whether that's been successful or not. Um, I did watch the adaptation of 68, I think it was, of Harold Pinter's The Birthday Party. I mean, Pinter is just pinnacle of theatre. And speaking of theatre, we lost Tom Stoppard. He died sadly. A brilliant playwright. Very erudite, which is what I like, and that's what I've been toying with about this play because I really want to do the erudite one where I have lots of references to different pieces of literature where they fit. And I really enjoy that. I like a work that you can see the influence, where you can sort of extrapolate different threads to take you to different pieces of work that build upon your understanding. I'm also listening to a radio adaptation or radio reading of Maxim Gorky's Summerfolk play. I'll I've not complete. I only started yesterday and I got distracted doing something else, so I'm going back to that today. That'll probably be later though because I do need to do some reading or listening, should I say, for audiobooks. Though remember, audiobooks are still reading. I will stand by that. And the conversation surrounding that really irritates me, but that's a conversation for another day. What other updates have I got? I suppose really what I've been watching and listening. Well, I was watching um I don't even know the last time we spoke, probably, well, Big Brother was on and that finished. And then I went into watching I'm a Celebrity, as I do every year. I don't watch much reality TV, but Big Brother is one I will watch. Um, I'm a Celebrity, watch every year, have done since I was little, since it started really, 2002. I predicted that Ginge would win. Now that's finished. Oh God, I completely forgot. Stranger Things. Yes, we got Stranger Things back. So yeah, the first 4 episodes. All right, let's talk about that for the minute, because that really is the big thing that I've been watching. So the first 4 episodes now, spoiler here, if you haven't seen it yet. So I don't like the way they're doing it by releasing it in little pitter patter, the piecing it out. I'm not a fan of that. So the first 4 episodes now, when the first episode came out, the whole bullying sequence with Dustin, they just made it really cheesy. And it's what's annoying me is it's very obvious that the kids are older now. I mean, Dustin looks like 25 and they've squeezed him into this kid's outfit and it just looks really odd. But also when he sort of put his head back against the locker and he gave him a middle finger, it's very juvenile. And the problem is the writing has never grown with the characters. So that's where the cheesy dialogue comes out. And as I said this on TikTok actually not long ago, is that because the writers have become so successful with it, there is no incentive for them to make the script perfect. Because when you're that famous and that successful, the pressure to sell a script is off your shoulders. Whereas for me, if I was trying to sell a script to Netflix, I have to make sure that it's absolutely the best, most perfected it can be. Whereas the Duffer Brothers can afford to be mediocre because they're getting the money. That is already a done deal. And that is the sad thing, I think, about financial success in terms of art and writing, because at some point people become lazy, and because they're financially secure, they don't put as much effort into making what they create as perfected as it can be, because there's no incentive. That's why the first series they did, even though, don't get me wrong, it wasn't exactly an indie project to begin with. They had Winona Ryder from series 1, but they still had to make sure it was perfected. And that is why season 1 will always be the best season, because there was nothing surrounding it. Whereas now, obviously, it's this sensation 10 years on. So there are things that I still like about it, but it has gone off piste quite a lot. And you can see that a lot of the actors are just no longer there. And that is the problem with taking so long to do things. Because people keep saying, oh, well, you want it to be the best quality, but look at The Sopranos, Friends, all these shows we used to get year in, year out, and the quality was just the same. It was just as high, but we got it year in, year out. But now, this is why I don't really like to watch new series now, because you'll watch one, and then if it does come back for a season 2, it won't be until 4 years later. And it's ridiculous these days. 4 years for an 8 episode series? It's just not good enough. So we've and what actually that's another thing is that because we've had no big character deaths before, we are now subject to a bunch of them in quick succession, which then it doesn't give the emotional charge that you need because they're all at once. It's not you don't see the aftermath. If Hopper had died that season, which was it season 3? Yeah, it was season 3 when he should have died. You know, at the end when we saw that he was actually at the prison. If he had died that season, I think things might have been a lot better because then we would have seen how, 11 might have coped without him, how everyone would have coped without him, because now they've really made his character pointless anyway, because before then, Hopper was central to solving, he was the only one that was taking everything serious in terms of the town and the leaders, but now he's just this sort of assistant guy within the story. And then we've got Holly, who obviously we knew from season 1 because she saw the lights, don't forget, in season 1, and she followed them. So I'm hoping we find out why Holly, because we obviously know that Will was taken the first season, but what's Holly got to do with it? Because Holly did see the lights and she followed them from the very first season. And now obviously Holly is now heavily involved. Um but yeah, I'm not entirely sure about it. And obviously now we've got Will having powers the same as 11. Well, actually, I say the same, but really potentially more powerful because Will is more Vecna than special powered child. So I'm not entirely sure where it's gonna go. I really can't predict what is gonna happen at this point. We've got a couple more episodes on Christmas Day. Um, so that's what, 12, 10, 12, oh God, it's 12 days from now. I didn't realise we were so close to Christmas. Yeah, so in 12 days' time, we have obviously the next few episodes, and then it's New Year's Eve that we have the 2-hour finale, and we get to see how it's going to end. It's crazy though when I think about it because I tell the story all the time, but I remember when it came out because it was 2016, I was 19 at the time, because I see a lot of people say they were kids. I was essentially a whole adult when it came out. So I remember at the time my sleeping pattern was all over the place. I was staying up all night and then sleeping all day. And so during the night, because of that at that time I was very depressed and I didn't have a writing routine like I did now. I wasn't submitting professionally way back then. So a lot of what I did at night was either watch stuff on TV or read a book. But this night I'd just finished watching the latest season of Orange is the New Black, which ends with Dyer picking up the gun. It was the start of the riot season. Um, just before the riot season, when she picks up the gun and the sort of change of Dyer. And after I finished that, the credits came on, and it came up at the bottom that said suggested watch, and came up with this thing called Strange Things, and I remember seeing it said Winona Ryder, and it just said about when this kid goes missing in this supernatural thing, and I thought, sounds okay. I need something to watch. So I stuck it on, binged it the entire night, and then the next morning I just knew I had this feeling. And I definitely tweeted this at the time, but I can never find the tweet now because I wish I still had it. Because I did say, which was, this will be the next big thing. I'm telling you, this will be big. And, here we are, all these years later. And it became, what it became. Because I remember that summer because it was the summer that the live streaming app was absolutely huge that summer. I was on it, I met some people on there. And so every live stream you would go into, every broadcast, you would hear it on in the background. Like everybody was watching it. Everyone was talking about it. I remember that summer. And so see that it's ending now as I approach like my final year of my 20s, and thinking about turning 30, it just seems crazy because I was 19 when it started. I was still actually a teenager. To think all that happened in that time, it's insane to think about the passage of time because that was well, yeah, actually the final full year we had at my childhood home because 2017 we moved in the December. Actually, in 2 days' time, it will be 9 years ago that we moved. It was the 15th of December 2017, the night we left. God, 9 years. Honestly, you forget about the passage of time sometimes. It really does a number on you. But yeah, so I guess we will see where people end up. I mean, we all know people are gonna die. Now, I'm predicting this now before Christmas comes, and I assume we'll have the deaths then. So if I'm predicting deaths, now the thing is, they've given Will the sort of chosen one trope. So Will either has to die and then come back to get rid of Vecna's connection to him, or Will has to die completely where it started with Will and then it ends with Will, or we lose 11 in the end because as much as it did begin with Will, it really began with 11 because by 11 and Henry and Vecna in the Rainbow Room, that whole incident they had, that's what formed the crack and where things began. So it would make sense for 11 to die. Um, I just don't know about. I don't think Hopper will die. Um, I mean the connection probably with them. So I think 11 has to die. I think in the end, because apparently I read that she was meant to die the first season, but because they liked her so much, they kept her on. Now I don't know what the show would have been without 11 still there. I assume where she was meant to die was the bit in season 1 near the end where she gets rid of the demagogue and when they're in the classroom. I assume that's where she was supposed to die originally. I guess we'll see about what happens to Max, whether she manages to get out of Vecna's mind or not. because as we've seen in the trailer that it looks like at one point they are trying to escape the hospital. Um, and they're playing the music and they're hiding from the Demogorgons. So I'm not sure what will be, what exactly will happen then. I just can't think of who else it would make sense for to kill off because, as I've said, 11 makes the most sense. Um, Lucas could, but I don't think Lucas dying would really. I mean, obviously the main few dying would, but other than that, I can't see anyone it making a big difference. Oh, well, Steve. Now we're all apprehensive, aren't we, about Steve dying? Now I will be very upset if Steve dies because the turnaround he had in season one from being this awful character to becoming this beloved character that we all know and love now. I mean, it would make sense. And I'm gonna be really, really upset if he does die. But I guess we shall see in 12 days' time. But yeah, so I think that's all the updates I have really. As I said, this is more of a casual episode, and I will try and keep coming back with planned episodes. And really, I just want to actually write something for the Maple Moon. You know, I want to be able to get something down on paper properly. But I hope you've enjoyed the updates. And if you've seen Stranger Things, discuss in the comments, or if you've got any favourite plays that you'd like to discuss, please do let me know. So yeah, signing off. I hope you've enjoyed listening. If you have, then please like and share. Um, yeah, go. I haven't done this in a while. Okay, signing off. This has been your host, Connie. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.